come to understand what the failure of love means. That all things are primarily sustained by a power which has as its primary purpose the survival and preservation of all that lives. So even in the heart of the smallest creature, or in some little vortex which is equivalent to, in a primitive form, to the heart focus, we know that the part of man which is above the physical has its final pole and its final center in the body, in the apex of the left ventricle of the heart. Here it is the pacemaker. Here it is that mysterious thing which plays the melody of life. The heart is the basis of life, and the heart serves all life without discrimination. We may say it has its own internal discrimination, but it does not play favorites with any part of the body, but serves them all as the one power which gives them life and makes possible the continuance of their existence. So it is actually that which, in a sense, becomes the symbol or the presence of the divine in man. In the books of Hermes it is written that the eternal power placed itself in the mysterious pyramid of the heart, and that the pyramid in Giza was an ancient mathematical formula to represent the heart of life. The wonderful Septapana cave of initiation in Buddhism is the heart. And in mysticism, all illumination arises from the power that is seated in the heart. For illumination is light. And life, properly directed and normally expressed, is illumination. Now, the second great power of the human body is another factor. And this second factor is derived again from evolutionary processes. And this factor is the mind. And the mind is centered in the brain. And the brain is again one of the most marvelous symbolical instruments that we can possibly imagine. The brain is more or less constantly in action, and from it flows the river of life which we call the spinal cord, and in turn adds something else to the construction of the complete person. This something else that is added is the control of the body by the mind. It is through the mind that the person in the body is able to administer the life which is seated in the heart. Therefore, there has to be a complete cooperation between the heart and the mind. The heart gives the energy to the mind by which it lives, but the mind in turn has a function. The mind, in a sense, we might say, is an executive guarding and protecting the body. Now, the mind of the average individual is not exactly protective in all cases. There seems to be some problem arise here. We find that the mind is very much like an arrogant adolescent. The mind decides that it is running everything. It forgets the fact that if the heart stops for a minute, the empire of the mind falls apart. We do not realize probably adequately in our interrelationships with other things that the failure of love destroys thought. That once the mind is no longer cooperating, it is inevitably cutting itself off from its own supply. It has refused to recognize, as man refuses, that there is a divine power superior to thought. In Eastern philosophy, man is called Manas, the thinker. And the thinker is a very important part of this great economy. It is the thinker which would enable man to learn how to take care of his own body. It is the thinker that can give him dedications by means of which he takes the divine energy within him and uses it for the perfection of society. The mind also is capable of a gradual advancement of itself until through mysticism it is finally absorbed in illumination. And illumination itself is merely an aspect of the infinite divine love located in the heart. Actually, therefore, the mind becomes a kind of prime minister. The mind is there because without mental controls, the body cannot serve its purposes. From the mind to the brain, therefore, there must be an adequate link. And this link is found by the study of the internal structure of the brain, where its ventricles, the ductless glands that are located there, and many other phases of development reveal the true mystery of the mind itself. For the mind is, as Aristotle says, is united to the body by an isthmus, this isthmus being the neck, which is the bridge between the mind and the body. And in the mind itself, there is the seat of what might be termed the initiate government. It is located as a servant of the heart. It is there to make certain that the life of the heart is interpreted into the integrity of the brain. The brain, of course, is only the shadow of the heart, of the mind, but it is a very important thing. Its various parts, its convolutions, and its ventricles, and all of the various faculty centers that are located there, gradually reveals to us the complete control which the mind can exercise over bodily function. But in order to do this, the mind itself and its body, the brain, by which we recognize the mind, must be understood. The purpose of the mind is not to create its own empire. But when a dictator in the individual, his own ego, decides to use the intellectual equipment merely to the advancement of his own purposes, he betrays its real purpose and betrays the body of which it is a part. So that the properly conditioned mind is the gentle and kindly and humble servant of life itself, and not a little tyrant or despot set up to enable one individual to be richer than another. We have the mind coming through the brain, and that part of the mind which is functioning in the material world is brain-centered, and from that must come wisdom. And wisdom is the power of the brain to interpret the life of the heart, to make sure that all things are fulfilled according to the law. It is the property and purpose of the brain to so control the conduct of the body that no discord can arise therein, nor can there be any discord between the individual brain and its mind background and any other brain anywhere in the world, because there is one universal mind. And when it is broken up into individualities, then these often become competitive. But there is no more competition actually possible than it is possible for the brain itself to go against the dictates of the heart. If it does so, all is lost. The third great pole in the human body is the generative system. This is what has been placed here as what Plato calls the eighth power of the soul. This is the perpetuation of life. This is the means by means of which there is continuity. There is the fulfillment of a law for the providing of bodies to souls until their evolution in this plane of existence is finished. The generative power, therefore, to the ancients was always sacred, one of the most sacred of all powers. It was supposed to be founded in the power of the heart, which was infinite love life, supported, directed, controlled by the mind, which becomes, in a sense, the most direct factor in the reproductive structure. For the real drive of reproduction is located in the brain. The reproductive process, falling into abuse, falling into excess, becomes again an enemy just as serious as materialism is when it becomes the controlling power of the mind. The generative system perpetuates life It creates the forms and bodies by means of which the invisible entities which come into manifestation find the open door into mortal life. When they come into this mortal life, they then call upon the other powers, because the mind as father and the heart as mother must, not only in the case of the world, but in the case of the individual, must recognize a moral responsibility to life itself. We know all too well that the gradual decline of moral ethics is a tragedy, not only to world peace, world insights, world understanding, but to the healthy perpetuation of the race to which we belong. This type of problem reveals, therefore, in the human body a triune deity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, a power of wisdom, strength, and beauty, a power to create, a power to rule and wisely govern that which is created, and a power to constantly improve the quality of creation. All these things are part of man's own structure. They're not something that was written in clouds on the sky or something. They are the daily experience of people. And in the presence of this, there seems to be a very great need for deeper understanding. Now, when we come to find that the body must be taken care of, and that these triune powers must have their own centers of function and must direct the manifestation of life, we then have the vital organs, which are distributed throughout the body. And perhaps one of the most important factors in this aspect of the subject is the process of nutrition. For all the parts of man's digestive and assimilative and excretory systems are parts of alchemy. Well, ultimately, we are going to find that alchemy and Kabbalah and all of these different phases of learning are merely symbolical of actual processes occurring within the human body. When we begin to appreciate this, we will have a new reason for the researching of these interesting and really very important fields. They are there to tell us a story. They are there to help us to understand something. In the process of nourishing the body, various elements combine. Some of these work through the magnetic field, such as the influence of planets and stars. Some work through the elementary atmosphere, the four elements of the ancients, and these produce certain elementary and elementary processes. Then we come down to the simple physical body of food. What is food? Food is life. And food is one great nutritional principle. When we take into our bodies various foods, they simply do not rush to one part of the body or another and set up abodes there. We don't have asparagus in one place and turnips in another. All of these food factors are passed through an alchemical transformation. The human system, particularly the digestive system, takes these faculties, takes these facilities, breaks them down to their essences, and in an essential form of life, then distributes them. So that we are not living off of cheese or macaroni. We are living off of a life principle that is present in all forms of nutritive material. All of this material is taken in, loses its own identity, and is transformed into a common substance that can be handled by the body. This is the most extraordinary form of alchemy that exists. For in this case, it takes food, which constitutes base elements, and transfers or transforms these foods into the spiritual gold by which life is sustained. So this part of the problem is very, very essential and very important. But it is necessary to part of the great economy of things. There are old diagrams in which the intestinal tract is corresponded to the mysterious underworlds of Dante's Inferno